is the first in a six-part series looking at the impact of AI for higher education faculty, what it means for teaching, what it means for learning, and how it's really just shifting our view of education in the AI era. Today, we're going to start with the basics. So if you have not played with AI at all, if you're just barely starting to get involved with AI, this is the session for you. And for those of you that are already using it a little bit, I give a few teasers as to what's to come when we start thinking more broadly about AI as it relates to teaching and learning. So to get started, I actually have a question for you to think about. When you think about your own AI use, where do you fall? On a scale from 1 to 5, with 1 being have never even touched it, and 5 being I use it all the time, how often are you currently using AI tools in your work? Now, regardless of where you fall on this scale, we're going to have 3 big picture questions that kind of guide our time together today. The first one is the most basic one. What is AI? We hear people talk about AI all the time. You cannot go to a conference in higher education right now without having the vast majority of the sessions focusing on AI. So we're just going to talk about what do they mean? When everyone is talking about AI, what is it and what is it not? And how are we using it? AI is everywhere. So we really want to think about what this means for us on a daily basis in our teaching and learning. And then for you personally, what does this mean for how you're using it? And your views on, are you using it ethically, responsibly, and how does it add to or subtract from the things you're doing in your daily life? So let's go ahead and dig on in. Let's get started with the thing I want you to remember as we have every conversation about AI. You always hear about how AI is thinking. And in fact, if you use ChatGPT, when you type it into the prompt, it'll often have a pop up underneath while it's waiting to generate the response that will say, AI is thinking. But I want you to really think about how AI works. It does not think. It does not know. It is a prediction tool. AI is built on large language models, which means the training data behind it, from which it bases all of its response, is a vast amount of information. And AI can really, really quickly scan through all of that information, and it's looking for patterns. So when you ask a question, it goes through this vast amount of training data and it looks, is there commonality in the replies or in the responses? That's how it produces the answers. It simply is identifying patterns from this massive amount of data, and it's predicting the most logical response. So while it sounds like it's giving you this conversational back and forth dialogue, it's just really, really quick at being able to make predictions. And because it has so much training and data available to it, those predictions are typically going to be correct. And they're going to be more accurate the more data that's available on any given topic. As an example, I teach in psychology. Most of the things that I'm teaching about, we have decades of research on. So the theories, the terms, the concepts, the ideas, these are well-known things. So when you ask AI a question about these psychological concepts, about how theory applies, it's usually going to be really, really accurate because it has so much data available that it can look for some really consistent and kind of well-standing patterns in that data. On the other hand, if you're working in an area where the data is not so well known, it might be newer, it might be emerging, it might be a controversial topic to where there's conflicting information out there, AI is going to be less accurate simply because it's going to be looking at all of that information and trying to make predictions about how it would respond. Because of that, it is always going to give you a confident answer, but that does not always mean it's going to be accurate. And that's one of the biggest challenges when we start working with AI, particularly if you don't understand how AI works, is we can get frustrated when it gives an inaccurate answer. And you go, oh my gosh, it hallucinated a source or it gave wrong information. How do I ever trust it? Well, if we think of the AI as really kind of like the internet on steroids, we're all really comfortable with the fact that the internet might have wrong information and that it becomes the consumer's job to be an effective user of that information. We need to take that same mentality to AI. We have to know under what circumstances we can be more confident in the answers and when we need to be more skeptical and dig a little bit deeper, ask a few more questions, or ask it to link us to the source information. Now, as I say, ask it to link us to the source information, that brings up another one of the big criticisms of AI, is people will say AI hallucinates information. And they're right to an extent. When we say an AI hallucination, what we're referring to is a made up source of information that doesn't actually exist. It just makes it up and it says this information came from this source. Now, the problem is we have to go back and remember how AI answers questions. It doesn't go get a source, it looks for patterns. So then when we ask AI to give us the source of information, even when the information it gave us was correct, what it's doing is it's going to look through, again, that vast amount of training data, and it's going to say, are there author names that come up frequently? Are there article titles that I saw a lot of related to this? Are there journals where this came up a lot? And it's going to piece together those pieces of information into a made up source. Because AI doesn't go and find a source. It looks for sources and it looks for patterns and consistency across those sources. So even when AI is giving us really accurate information, it often can't give us an accurate source of information. And as educators, this distinction becomes really important because our students are using AI and our students are going to continue to use AI. So us telling our students don't use AI, it can be inaccurate, isn't nearly as effective as us starting to talk to students about how we should use AI to get accurate information, how we need to question it, how we need to understand where it gets information to where we can then go back and find more academic sources. But really, being a critical consumer is super important once you understand how AI works and how it's getting its information. It is an amazing tool, but it's just a tool. And it requires you as the human user to be an effective user of that tool and an effective consumer of the information that it's giving you. Now, as I've been talking so far, I just keep saying AI, as if it's one thing. Most of the time, when you hear somebody refer to AI, what they really are referring to is generative AI. There are two broad categories of AI that are now available to the public. Generative AI, which is the one that was released back in November of 2022 when ChatGPT first released its model to the public. Generative AI is AI that can respond. So just like you would go into a web browser, it has a place that you can ask it questions, that you can prompt it, that you can give it tasks. And generative AI responds to those prompts. So you can ask it to write an email for you. You can ask it to edit text for you. You can ask it to summarize. You can ask it to explain. You can ask it to brainstorm. You can ask it a question and it can give you an answer. But the key in all of this is you are doing a request and it is responding to your request. And so generative AI is really most of the AI that we're using right now. So this is ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Copilot, Perplexity, Poe. There are lots and lots of generative AI programs. In fact, many universities are releasing their own generative AI programs right now. I work at Grand Canyon University. We have our own in-house generative AI program called Mosaic. So there are going to be lots and lots of generative AI options. But when you hear somebody right now anyway, just refer to AI, chances are they're talking about generative AI. The other kind of AI, and this is kind of the up and coming AI, it's here right now, but it's still new. And so most people aren't yet referring to this when they're talking about AI, but it's agentic AI. And whereas generative AI needed you as the user to ask it a question, it would give you output, and then you had to do something with that output, agentic AI takes it one step further. It acts for you. It acts as an agent, hence the word agentic AI. So not only can it create content, but it can do something with that content. As an example, you could go to agentic AI and you could say, will you go through my email? Decide if an email is a marketing email or if it's something I need to respond to. If it's a marketing email, mark it as spam and then unsubscribe me from that. And agentic AI then, without you doing anything else, can do that for you. It can start to go through that. Another example, maybe you have a syllabus from a class. You could tell agentic AI, I want you to take this syllabi, I want you to go through it, and I want you to pull out every due date. And then I want you to take those due dates and I want you to put them on my calendar. And then I want you to set a calendar reminder 48 hours before every due date to remind me what I need to be working on. And once you give it the task, it can then break that task down and figure out what do we need to do? What steps do I need to take to do that? And then it can actually act on your behalf to implement that plan. So it can engage within your email, within your calendar, on your computer. You could ask it, for example, to go through your computer desktop and find all the photos and create a new folder and reorganize all your photos according to the date at which that photo was taken. The difference between generative AI and agentic AI. Generative AI produces novel content. It responds to your requests. Agentic AI acts on your behalf based on your goals. So you'll tell it what you want it to do. It can then actually engage on your computer to implement those goals. Now, where it gets a little bit confusing is that almost all of the agentic AI programs are built from the same companies that also have a generative AI program. So for example, I told you Claude is one of the popular generative AI programs. Well, Claude also has an agentic AI program called Cowork. Perplexity is a generative AI program. They also have Comet, which is an agentic program. There's AutoGPT. Microsoft has AutoGen. We're going to see many more of the agentic AI programs being released all the time. This is the up and coming next evolution of AI. And while it's here right now, it's just not as mainstream yet. So it's available and people are going to start using it more and more. But most of the time at the moment, when you hear somebody talking about AI, they're really referring to generative AI. Now, in terms of what this means for you as an educator, it really depends because both generative AI and agentic AI have strengths and places they can really help us in education, and they also each present some risks. So your goal isn't that you would want one or the other, or that you're trying to ban one or whatever it might be, but rather understanding each kind of AI so that you can think about how they're going to impact your experience. And so generative AI is really going to require you to be actively involved. It's your assistant. It can take everything that you ask it to do. It can generate text. It can give images. It can help you write discussion prompts, write assessments. It can help you generate feedback. Widely available. Faculty are using it. Students are using it. Agentic AI then takes it one more step, and it's going to be able to implement a series of tasks on your behalf. Both of them have valuable implications for teaching and learning. So while you're probably using generative AI at some level today, if you're not using agentic AI yet, which research tells us most people are not yet, chances are you're going to hear more and more about it in the next year or so. And so then when you start thinking about this huge world of AI, I actually want you to step back a bit. Because what often happens when I talk to people about AI is they're like, okay, well, I need to be using AI. And I always say, well, not necessarily. What you need to do is you need to think about what does your day look like? Where are you spending your time? And as you think about your day and where you're spending your time, how could you adjust that to help you better meet your own personal goals? As an example, Our research with our faculty at GCU found that for faculty that were teaching online, 40% of their time was spent giving feedback to students, just grading assignments and providing feedback. Well, for us, one of the goals of AI use would be to reduce the amount of time that faculty have to spend giving good feedback, because we know feedback's important. We want them to be giving good feedback, but we also know that we want them to be interacting with students and talking to students and engaging with students. And there's only so much time available. So if we can bring AI in to reduce the amount of time they're having to spend on feedback without reducing the quality of that feedback, it opens up more time for them to meet their other instructional goals. So the question is not, how do I use AI or where should I use AI? The question is, where are you spending time that you would like to streamline so that you can make time available for something else? Because once you can identify where you're spending that time that you would like to streamline or reclaim some of that time, then you can start looking for an AI tool that will help you with that. Because there's a lot of AI tools, and many of them are designed to help with specific tasks. So generative AI tools like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Copilot, Perplexity, they're really good at generating text. So if you spend your day writing, whether that's writing feedback, writing emails, writing books, writing research articles, you probably want to start exploring a little more with some of the text generation tools, because they're just going to help you do the things you need to do more quickly. If you spend a lot of your time editing other people's work, it might be a text generation tool that you use to help you with that editing. But there's also writing refinement tools, Grammarly and Quillbot, that are designed even more explicitly to help preserve the original tone of the writing, but just enhance it. So they're almost more like editing tools. If you spend your time creating graphics or creating images, tables, figures, whatever it might be, you might be better off using an image generation tool such as OpenArt or DALL-E or Midjourney. For me personally, I actually write a lot of presentations. And so I use content design tools. The presentation you're looking at right now, I designed with the help of Gamma. There's Gamma, there's Canva AI, there's Beautiful AI. But depending on where you spend your time, you're going to want to find tools that are uniquely suited for that task. So I was talking to a colleague the other day and I commented that I use AI to help me with my presentations. And they said, I tried that too. And I just didn't find that I liked the presentations that it made. And then as we started to talk more deeply, she said, I'm still using ChatGPT to make my presentations. And I said, well, that's the problem. ChatGPT will make a presentation, doesn't do a terrible job at it, but it's not designed to make a presentation. If making presentations efficiently is the goal, you're going to be better off going to an AI program that's explicitly designed to do that. Just like if you're spending a lot of your time researching, you can use Claude or Gemini to research, but they're not designed as research tools. So if you're doing research explicitly, and that's where you're spending a lot of time, you're going to get more bang for your buck to use a research tool like Elicit or Research Rabbit or Skype or one of those. Or if you're actually making interactive multimedia, use a tool designed for that. Synthesia, Descript, 11 Labs. The key, and I think this is where it gets overwhelming for a lot of people, they hear about all of these AI tools and they almost start to shut down. But it's because they're starting with the tool, not the task. Flip your thinking and ask yourself, what am I wanting to do more efficiently or more effectively? And once you can name that, then go into that specific category of tools and start exploring. Because it's much less overwhelming when you know exactly what you hope to accomplish with the AI. Because AI has a lot of potential for educators. One of the things that has become increasingly clear over the last few decades is educators are overworked, they are tired, and they are burnt out. AI is a master helping you do the things you already do more efficiently. So the goal here is not to replace your expertise or not to do what you do. It's to help you do what you do so that you can get it all done. So many of the best practices we have in education right now are best practices that are based partially on theory but partially on the practical constraints of being a human. We just know their limits. And so we give ourselves rules and guidelines where theory and practical constraints intersect. Well, AI comes into the mix because it starts to alleviate some of those practical constraints. I, as an instructor, often have 25 to 75 students in my class, and it can be really hard to tailor and adapt content for that many different people. I just don't have the time to do it. AI can. AI can endlessly brainstorm discussion questions for me. It can help me word lesson objectives. It can help me give feedback. It can help me create case studies. It can help me design rubrics. Notice in all of these, it's helping me. It's just giving me a first draft really, really quickly that I can then go in and tweak and tailor and customize. But I can just do it more efficiently than if I had to have done that first draft by myself and then still had to go in and do all the edits and adjustments. So AI is not going to do anything that I couldn't do myself, but it does it faster. So I still need to be there. I still need to say, like, that was a good discussion question. That one's not. This rubric isn't tailored enough to what I'm going for. It needs me to give it the guidelines and to interact and engage to really come up with a good product. But because it can do it so much more quickly, I can now actually provide a better educational experience for my students because I can give them more content, give them more resources, give them more options. Because some of those practical limits of me being one human trying to meet lots of needs are just being alleviated by me bringing in AI to help me do it more efficiently. And we need to think about just like AI helps us do things super efficiently, it does the same for students. And I think this is where so much of the tension is coming in right now in higher education, because we as educators are fully aware of the fact that our students are using AI. And in many cases, they're taking our assignment directions or our discussion prompts and they're putting them into AI, and then they're just copying and pasting the output. And we get so frustrated with the fact that students can use AI to complete our assignments that we've often started to like ban AI and said, well, the AI, no AI, keep it out of my class. You may not use it. We're threatening students, with academic integrity violations if they use AI because of this fear that they're using it to complete our assignments. While they are using it to complete our assignments, we as educators have to take a different approach. Because just like I can use AI to adapt to so many more of my students, AI is right there to help my students learn more effectively. It can give immediate detailed feedback on their writing if the student knows how to use it correctly. It can generate practice questions. It can help them organize their notes. It can clarify misconceptions. It can summarize readings for them. It can give them feedback on their own understanding when they summarize things. It can do text to speech translations. It can simplify content. It can give them again and again and again feedback when they're not understanding it, even if they're really struggling in an area. It can tutor them and give background information to help them understand that. And it can do it individually for every single student in my class in a way that I simply cannot as a human. I don't have the time. So, as educators, I really would push you to start thinking beyond the fear of AI that students are using it for cheating, and instead start to think about what does learning look like in the AI era? If a student can complete my assignment really easily just by putting my prompt into AI and copying the output, how do I need to change that assignment so that it's really measuring the things I care about? How can I use AI to not simply look at the product of learning, but also to look at the process of learning? How can I enable students and really empower them to use AI in meaningful ways that support their learning, not just to bypass their learning? Now, in our session today, we're not going to dive into that, but we're absolutely going to hit on those topics and some of the other 5 webinars coming up. So join us for more details on the how-to behind this. But I think step 1 is really changing our mindset, because so many of us have gotten into an anti-AI mindset because of the cheating that we aren't even open to what an AI-enabled learning really looks like, or the potential that's available for that. Because AI does really add value. You'll hear me say again and again and again, AI can't do anything you can't do. But because it can do it faster, that changes everything. It can read far more articles than I can to synthesize information together for me. It can really, really quickly look at the feedback that I gave to 75 students to really summarize the strengths and weaknesses and things I need to re-hit as an instructor to dig into again. It can give me different iterations of an assignment to meet the needs of students. Learning theory tells us the more it's individualized to their interests and their goals, the more a student will invest and become intrinsically motivated to do our work. Well, AI allows me to adapt it and do that for my students. And so perhaps one of the ways to fight AI cheating in this modern era is not to ban AI, but to start thinking about how do I use it to adapt assignments to where my students are actually interested and want to engage because they care about the output. And as we're doing all this, AI lets you do this consistently across a lot of students, regardless of where they're at, what they need, and how they learn best. So AI really does add a ton of value when we start thinking about the things that we do again and again and again, or that need adapted across large numbers. This is where time was always the barrier and where AI is opening up the possibility in education. And as I say that, let's not forget where this presentation started. But AI is an assistant because we know that it can have inaccuracies and it needs a person involved, talking, looking, interacting, asking the right questions, teaching students how to ask the right questions. We know that it's only as current as its recent training data. So we just have to have a remembrance of like where it's at, what it can do and what it can't do. And that it's not human. As much as the answers can feel human and the conversational way that it talks to us can give the impression that it is a conversation, it does not have context. It does not have emotional intelligence. It doesn't give good ethical judgment. And we know that it can be biased based on that training data and where it comes from. We also know that it doesn't have a specific source. And because it doesn't have that source transparency, it is often a barrier for academics in which having that source identification is a key part of critically understanding the strengths and weaknesses of any piece of information. It does not reason. It does not give judgment. It just can give really fast, accurate iterations. It can generate content, and then it needs us as experts to weigh in, to talk back, to push back, to ask questions, to synthesize, to point out when it might not be current, when it might not be accurate, when it is biased, because AI is simply a tool. So when you take those strengths and you take those weaknesses and you bring them together in a real critical understanding of the benefits and drawbacks of AI, you can then start thinking about AI as your assistant. Just like if you had an undergraduate human assistant or even a graduate human assistant, you would oversee their work, you would stay on top of it, you would make sure that it was accurate, and that's what you want to do when you're using AI. You want to supervise it. You want to be involved. You don't want to turn the processes over to AI, but you want to think about the fact that it is available 24/7. It can work really quickly. And the more information you give it on what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish, the more accurate it's going to be. Because the better we can equip it and give it that context, give it some of our parameters and judgment, the more that it's going to operate in ways that align with the goals of the activity that we're asking it to do. And so you want to start thinking about how should I be changing my assignments with these strengths and weaknesses in mind? How can I now even measure things that I was never able to before? Historically, we've been limited to just measuring the product of a student's learning, their final paper, their final test. Now we could actually ask them to do an activity with AI where they're interacting and they're engaging and they're asking questions and they're answering questions, not to show their knowledge, but to show their awareness of shades of gray or of nuance or of context. And the assessment itself might be the conversation. We know that AI can look at vast amounts of data. We might actually say, how can AI help me speed up that feedback I'm giving to students? And then, how do we role model for students what good AI use looks like? Being transparent with students about how we're using it, asking students to be transparent about how they're using it, and just really thinking more holistically, not about AI as a binary, like AI good or AI bad, but where in my work will AI help me do the things that I know are important and do them better or more efficiently? And where can I streamline things that are maybe low impact or repetitive tasks to just reallocate my time into the things that I know actually make a difference? Now, every time I say this, you'll see people get really excited and then suddenly start saying, yeah, but like, how do I know? How do I know where AI is really going to help and where I might be crossing a line? But I always say, if you can answer these three questions for yourself, you're probably in good shape and you're probably using AI in a way that's going to be ethical and appropriate in your context. First question, is it helping learning? Because if you can say, yes, it's helping learning, whether that's because you've enabled students to study better, whether you've given students the tools and the knowledge to use AI as part of the learning process instead of bypassing it, whether you've changed an assignment, whether you've changed the way you teach, whatever it might be, are you using an AI in ways that serve learning? And if the answer is yes, you can move to the next question. Am I being open and honest about my use of AI? So I tell my students, I use AI to help me, and then I give them a list of things that I do. I use AI to help me generate good discussion questions. I use AI to help me redo their assignments to really think about whether I'm measuring learning. I use AI to help me write and generate their announcements. I talk to them about it. And I talk to them about where I would never use AI because I want them to know that I'm connecting with them in a real personalized human one-on-one way. So I'm just really open and transparent. And I tell my students, and I want you to do the same, because I'm not going to ban AI in this class, but I am going to give guidelines. For example, when we're doing threaded discussions in the online class, you can use AI to help you do background research. You can use AI to help you brainstorm ideas. You can use AI to help you clarify your understanding so you can write it correctly. But I want you to actually write the response yourself because this is a discussion, not an essay, not an assignment. It's a discussion. And I want to hear your voice and I want to get to know you. And that's why I'm asking you not to use AI to write it, even though you can use AI in these other ways to help your learning. So not only am I being transparent about my use, but I'm giving really clear expectations to my students and I'm asking them to be transparent about their use. Then the last question, and can you stand behind it? And I always say this kind of goes back to that first draft principle. Are you okay owning what that AI produces? Which means you want them to engage with it and you want to engage with it. You're saying, I will be accountable for its accuracy. I will be accountable for the biases. I will be accountable for it because I collaboratively engaged with AI. So I'm willing to stand behind this the way I would stand behind it if it was my own individual autonomous writing that I had done all by myself. Just the other day, somebody asked me, if we ran your Gene, they said, if we ran your writing through an AI detector, what would we find? And I said, well, first of all, AI detectors are unreliable, so we wouldn't want to do that. But if we did, I would also say you're going to find that they come up very, very high, 90% plus. And it's not because I'm not writing that email. And I just use air quotes as I said the word writing. But it's because I almost always collaboratively write with AI right now. So I've got AI open on my screen at almost all times. If I need to write an email, I hit the audio button and I say, compose an email to, tell them I need to do this, highlight this, this, and this. Now, when I do that, it's not just transcribing for me. It's taking the thoughts of the content that I want to write and it's assembling it. So that email is going to show up as 100% AI generated. And technically it was, if we're calling AI generated the production of the words. But I can stand behind it. It's my thoughts, it's my content, it's my ideas. I read it, I checked it, I edited it. It wasn't that AI did it for me. AI produced my thoughts. So it was very collaborative. And for me, I have no ethical problems with that at all because I can stand behind it. And if somebody asks me, well, did you tell me you use AI? Well, did you ask? Because if you ask me, the answer is yes. Yes, I collaboratively write almost everything I do. Just like I told you this presentation, I collaboratively created with Gamma. Did Gamma create the graphics? Yes. Did I tell it, here is my framework for ethical AI use? Here's the 3 questions that I have? Yes. So it produced the content you're looking at on the screen, but it's my intellectual property behind it, and I can stand behind that AI use. So with all of this in mind, I kind of want to give you 3, what should you take from this time? The first one, I just want you to remember how AI works. AI doesn't know anything. It's not all knowing. It's a prediction model. Because it has so much data behind that prediction model, it's typically going to be accurate. So it's good. It's effective. It is going to save you time. But you always want to remember, it's just predicting. It doesn't know, and it absolutely needs me to be involved. The second, when you hear the word I want you to remember there's 2 kinds of AI. Generative AI responds, agentic AI acts. Right now, most of what we're seeing is generative AI. We will increasingly see more agentic AI as time goes on. And the third, and this is the most important takeaway, your role hasn't changed. You are the expert. You are the content provider. You are the director. You are the guide. You are what creates a real learning experience. Learning is inherently a social experience, and AI hasn't changed any of that. AI has just changed the context, and it's allowed us to approach this experience differently. We can now reallocate time. We can now create different resources. We can now engage in ways we couldn't engage before, but our role hasn't changed. And so what we do is going to continue to be important. How we use AI to help us do it better is what's going to keep moving forward. So with that said, I actually welcome you. If you have any questions, comments, you can absolutely share those with us and we'd be happy to address them. But also join us for the upcoming webinars where we're going to dive in more deeply about the kind of how-to behind some of these pieces of advice that I've offered today.